to give you a little bit of context because I think a lot of times as we go through this presentation, one of the first things that people tend to do is they tend to kind of widen the scope. And I just want to remind everybody, our charge really is focusing in on downtown, 3rd Street as a part of a character district of this historic core of the community, as well as the MDDA. So a lot of times when we get into this, we start getting into things that probably would overlap in Susan's category and her kind of realm of influence. So we really did a lot to focus in on the charge of the MDDA and the brand around the downtown and those districts that make it up. So Sean and I constantly found ourselves fighting with ourselves to kind of keep the framework in, because there were so many cool things that we were finding that were more regional in influence and that kind of thing. And I think you'll see how that plays out. But as you're seeing it, I just want you to realize that the task here is not to try to truly capture the entire essence of the region. It's very much focused in on these districts right at the historic core. Make sense? So what we always get to start with is we get to start with looking at logos that already exist. Apparently Marquette was very, very, very attracted to round things. So you can see this is just a sample of some of the logos that exist. It appears as though the city recently, and sometime in the recent past, went through an extensive rebranding process where they took their seal from this to this, so you can see that evolution is truly mine. No, I'm just kidding. You know, we see those a lot in communities where a seal is an important tool to have, but it's not a marketing tool. Like that's not the symbol that we need to use to tell the story of the community. So the area that we're really focusing in on, these are some of the events, some of the other things that we saw throughout the community, some private sector, some organizational in nature, but our charge really is honed in on this. So, you know, sailboats, county courthouse, clock. Okay, we can probably do better than this, right? This logo, early 90s, late 80s.
Oh no. Well, 2004, 2005.
Oh.
I can't remember.
It might have been done before and then hid for a little while and then came back.
Okay, more than 10 years.
Okay, all right. So, you know, it's a very typical approach a lot of the time, but it's not dynamic. And one of the things that it does is it very much focuses on the literal nature, those literal elements. You see a lot of logos that feature the clock tower, the lighthouse, and that kind of stuff are more adopted. What we really wanted to do is we wanted to create a platform that was a little bit more dynamic and also at the same time being a little simpler so that it had more room for expandability. Now, one of the concepts that I always like to introduce is this idea of having two different parts in this toolbox, an organizational brand and a destination brand. The MDDA is a city authority, and it is funded through a taxing mechanism. So you have this whole organizational identity, and then you also have the downtown destination brand. This is the identity that the business community and the event organizers, they all share, and they contribute to develop brand equity in that. So they can be closely connected, but they still need to have enough separation that you can clearly define. And what they had done, as you can tell, is literally it was just a lot of different words were the things that denoted the difference between the two. And we're still going to keep it really close, but I think we're going to make it a little bit easier to understand what DDA is. So, any questions so far? Does that make sense, the direction we're walking? So the first thing we always like to do is we like to look at colors. Just because you're on Lake Superior, you don't have to use only blue. You know, so that's one of the first things that you get to free up and kind of open that up. We selected one of the largest color palettes that we have in a very long time. I think that there are, guess what? They're the same number of colors as there are letters in Marquette. So we picked 9 different colors. Now that's a big system, but really there are 4 that are the main. So It looks a little off on the screen, but what we did was we picked colors that really showed up over and over again from the photos that we took in the community. And it kind of carries us through from the water, more the natural elements, into more the warmth and energy of the community itself. So again, I don't think that this isn't the kind of thing that people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you picked that color. Well, there are a lot of colors in there, you know. It's a broad enough spectrum that it's not going to feel overly corporate. It's not going to feel, when you're a university town and you have a college that has very, very defined, you know, colors, being able to have a broader spread, it makes it feel a little bit more organic and it makes it easier for people to participate in your system. So that's kind of that simple starting point, identifying the color palette, and then from there, we like to look at typefaces. And what we did with you guys is we selected 3 different as our family. The primary has a very narrow horizontal scaling. That means the letters are not very wide. That's because Marquette has a lot of letters. So we wanted to be able to make sure that we had a way that we could present Marquette in a way that was legible and was easy to get that height and that understanding. Marquette's an interesting word. Anytime you have a word that's got Q in it, can be a little weird. Having, you know, ETTE, having kind of repetitious sequences can be interesting. We thought it was very clever that in the middle of Marquette is you. You're in the middle, you know. But we didn't do anything with that, so don't worry. The secondary typeface is a sans serif typeface. I learned in school that a serif is a doohickey. That's a technical term. It has doohickeys on it. So sans serif means without serif. It's a clean, kind of content neutral typeface. The reason that we picked this secondary is it literally has a full spectrum of widths and weights. It's called Acumen, easy to use, and you can really make it work anywhere in that expansion system. And then we selected an accent typeface that was a little bit more hand, a little bit more scripty. These are not particularly legible. They're not intended to be overly legible. They're intended to bring people in and kind of humanize. So you're never going to see Marquette or downtown in that accent, but you're gonna see some of those things that are meant to bring people in a more personalized way. Make sense? Okay. So then, just to kind of show you, this is what the name starts to look like, and it's bold. It kind of, I wanted to do something that felt like it was a little inspired from some of your history, you know, this strong, like, weight to it. But then, one of the things that we started to play around with was this, simply by kind of accenting that cue and creating what we call the welcome mat. Like, it gives you this opportunity to have something that's just a little clean, a little easy to use. So you'll see how that evolves. Okay, so we're just moving this forward with the foundations of the system. We have 3 main focuses that we're looking at with the downtown brand. Number 1, top priority, reconnecting with locals. People that live in Marquette have the lowest motivation to rediscover their own community. That's why when you talk to business owners who open up and say they've been open for 3 years and they still have people come in every day that say, I didn't know you were here. How long have you been open? I've been open for 3 years. I've been open 14 years. People don't explore their own communities. They assume they know it all. You know, so you have to create that sense of, it's almost like a sense of things have changed underneath you without you knowing. So that curiosity is driving them in to rediscover. This is also a place where an enhanced University Pride campaign could roll in. This is also where any of your parking messaging might roll into, because that's always fun. The second focus, enhance the regional role. Okay, so this is understanding the role that you play in the greater region, understanding that you have major retail big boxes that are bringing consumers in from a far wider radius. We want to make sure that we have conversion strategies in place that help to make sure that when somebody's driving in to Marquette to go to Best Buy, they're finding their way downtown, so you want to maximize that economic impact of the people who are already doing the heavy lifting. We call that strip retail conversion. This is your simple kind of shopping, browsing strategy. You want to make sure that somebody who's doing the effort to get here is making more than one stop. And then this is also what we call the Third Street introduction. Third Street is, there's a lot of discussion about what is Third Street? Is Third Street downtown? Is Third Street not downtown? And I think that that whole discussion really, it almost caused an avalanche of over analysis. Third Street, guess what Third Street is? It's a street. You know, it's a street that has businesses on it. So there's automatically an emphasis on businesses along the street that feel a camaraderie for those businesses. So we want to make sure that we can highlight that. Third Street is different than downtown. Third Street is a single linear street, moves up to down, and most of the businesses are visited by customers who are intending to go there as a single destination. Driving their car, parking, getting out, going into business. Where downtown is gridded, it has a different dynamic, it might have a different expectation and motivation from the consumer in terms of where they're parking and where they're going to, might have a different average number of stops. We want to treat them as brothers, but we don't want to treat them as they're the same thing. Make sense? So introducing that to the regional people and being able to drive additional traffic will be important for their economic growth. And then the third strategy is very much making sure that downtown is prepared to both play host and realize economic benefit from the efforts of Travel Marquette. As Travel Marquette tells the story of how this community plays this role in the region and is bringing people here and positioning it as a base camp for adventure, you now become the place that you eat that amazing meal after a day of being lost in the beauty of the UP. You know, so being able to just be prepared to have that kind of partner strategy with them. So again, all that fit? Anything giving you heartburn yet? You're allowed to say, I mean, I get to leave today. So then from there, we'll also like to just kind of talk a little bit about some of the qualities and values that we heard you all say. There's some that I put up there that I'm a little iffy on, and I'll talk a little bit about the nuance. The very first one, outdoorsy. You know, I don't know. I don't know if you're outdoorsy. You definitely are people who love the outdoors. There's a fine line between when a community becomes outdoorsy, and I'm not actually sure that that conversion over to being outdoorsy is always a positive thing. There's a weird dynamic in Western North Carolina that when a community becomes outdoorsy, there's like a fog of patchouli around the community. You know, so it's like just being really mindful. There's definitely there is no doubt there's a value and a connection to the outdoors. But think about that nuance. Is that a goal of us? Or do we just want to be a group, you know, a place where people convene with the outdoor and then, you know, also connect with the community? You're definitely unexpected. We heard that over and over again. People don't expect for Marquette to have as much as it does. Marquette, to a certain degree, is a contradiction to what people know of the UP. You know, they think one thing and you have so much more. So those are some really cool messages. You're definitely walkable. You're a community that's approachable. Part of that might come from your geography. We kind of came to the realization that if Marquette had been located downstate, you would have long since been screwed up by now. You know? So your remoteness has served as a protection for your quality of life, but it has also helped to maintain a certain nature of being warm and very approachable. There's no denying the lakefront, having this downtown that literally spills into Lake Superior. You are cool. You have a cool factor. That is not just temperature. That is, you know, you've got an energy in downtown and energy in 3rd Street that is cool. But at the same time, you're understated. Not once did we hear anybody talk about how you're arrogant or elitist or anything like that. I mean, there might be some little pockets that people might say that kind of thing. And we did hear in the survey that the other communities on the UP maybe don't always love Marquette, but that's the kind of jealousy that confirms that we're doing things right. So we're okay with that. You're a college town, and there wasn't a lot of talk about that. You know, you are definitely, you have this university here. There's a lot of pride connected to it. You don't go so far that every single thing that you do is green, and you know, game days, everything shuts down. But that's an important part, because that higher education and that culture that it provides is one of the things that has fueled your acceptance and fueled your cultural diversity. You have momentum. You are doing projects. Your citizens are seeing investment. They're seeing positive change. You're definitely historic, and you're definitely beautiful. So those were some of the things that really kind of stuck out to us over the past couple of days. So we take all those, and then what we do is we pull them all together into what we call a brand statement. And obviously, everything that you're seeing was done since yesterday, so don't judge me if I spelled something wrong. I deserve that. It's probably going to be something that's misspelled or inappropriate grammar. So if you're an English teacher or former English teacher, just give me a little break. I promise I'll change it. I address all the red squiggly lines in PowerPoint. So, but I want to read this for you and see if you can kind of see how this brought us to where we landed. It takes a little more time to get here. It takes a little more effort to stay. Winters are known to be cold. Even the summers can be chilly. The winds off the lake can be rattling. We wouldn't change a bit. The UP is a special place filled with stunning views, breathtaking nature, and re-energizing solitude. And at the center of it all is a place we call home. Marquette was named for the pioneer who explored this amazing place, and it is only fitting that we have become its heart. At times unexpected, downtown Marquette is always alive with unique businesses, amazing flavors, welcoming events, vibrant arts, and shoreless opportunities. We are the UP's college town and its cultural hub. We are its base camp and its outpost. We are the UP's historic downtown and its welcoming host. We invite you to get reacquainted with the place that is in season every season and discover what we mean by downtown Marquette, unexpectedly warm. So that simple concept to be able to play off both that nature that you've got more than people might think, while also having this place that people can easily connect with. And I think one of the things that we heard, and I'll go ahead and kind of show you a little, that the icon is just a very simple stylized M, but it's made up of these different components that tie in to different components that we heard people talk about, whether it's the university, West End, 3rd Street, downtown, Baraga Ave, Lower Harbor, Lakeshore, Founders Landing. You know, we don't expect that anybody's going to see that and be like, oh, look, that's an icon created of all the components of it.
Yeah.
We get that. That's not what that's about. This is more about springboard for storytelling. It's about simplicity that allows for that easy ability to wrap your arms around all your different facets and tell all your different stories from the same platform. So when you start to look at this, again, it's a relatively simple composition. It starts to pull these things together in a way that allows you to look a little cleaner, a little bit more contemporary. You can do this because it is focused on downtown. If you were charged with that true community-wide task, you're having to balance a lot more facets to it. You have to balance with more attention that access to outdoor recreation and those things that people expect to see with the swishies of the lake and that kind of stuff. You kind of have a little freedom to be a little bit more dynamic when your boundary is smaller. Now, from that, you can start to see how the system really, because of how it's built, it's pretty easy to expand and grow. It's easy to use these different colors to relate to different parts of the the downtown and of the district. And we played a lot, I'll tell you. We played a lot with, are these districts, are these components, the big question was, is 3rd Street downtown? And it's pretty simple, 3rd Street's 3rd Street. That's what we like to do, you know? So you're gonna see, we are showing a system where 3rd Street is gonna be able to have a system of its own with a slightly different message, all using the same type, all using the same approach, and even using inspiration from the same graphic set. So this little, did we decide it was called a tilde? Chad, do you know, is it a tilde? What's the thing that comes down out of the cube? Can we call it a tilde?
Yeah.
Okay, so the little tilde in the cube, that little element that pops down, being able to highlight it like that, it creates a very simple slanted rectangle. Because Sean likes to build meaning into everything that he does, he looks at the angles and he made sure to, he was like, well, what angle would be appropriate for a place like Marquette? And he was like, well, I mean, 32 seems appropriate. That's freezing. And it's pretty cold here. So, you know, again, nobody's going to know that, but it's kind of funny to build those things into it. But what you see is once you have a platform like this, the way that it can expand to 3rd Street is something like this, where the 3rd Street adopts that same image, but now all of a sudden it becomes like a window that they can bring in all these different textures, they can bring in all this different imagery. It can feel a little bit more, you know, they can shape their own identity. Whether you're going and getting Thai food, and there's pad Thai texture back there, or whether you're going to University Pharmacy, you know, just to get buttermints, which I did. So being able to realize that that district is unique, but there's energy there, so you want to give tools to the business owners so they can cultivate that and shape what they look like. Now, I want to keep moving forward and build on this. So the first is really looking at that DDA. And the DDA, again, is just organizational. We wanted to take the icon, tie it in, but it gives us this good, bold, okay, who's in charge of this? Oh, the DDA does that. That's what this logo is for. It's not for a whole lot else. It is for making people realize this is what the DDA does. Now, taking that and rolling it out, started to look at things like business cards and envelopes and stationery and that kind of stuff, even out into being able to assemble with pocket folders, any kind of information, whether it's communication to the business owners or whether it's talking to prospects. Being able to have that professionalism that makes its way all the way through. Now, underneath the DDA, there are these, I don't want to call them sub-organizations, but they're these weird little groupings. So one was called East Side Independent Restaurant Association. So it was ERA, and they do East Side Originals Restaurant Week, and they have their cool little logo with the fork that's in the shape of the E. So what we wanted to do was we just wanted to kind of reconfirm that, bring that system a little more into the brand, using the colors in the background, and adopting the typefaces, and then introducing that simple tagline, local flavor, because that's what they're about, you know? And now all of a sudden, instead of overcomplicating it with an Independent Restaurant Association name and then an event called East Side Originals, just, you are East Side Originals. And we do a restaurant week and keep it clean and simple. Remove a layer of complexity. Now the next thing, talking about complexity, was the Marquette Downtown Promotion Committee meetings. There's literally a logo on the website for Downtown Promotion Committee meeting, I think is what the logo says. It's an opportunity for businesses to learn and to be heard. So we wanted to change this. We didn't want it to sound like a group. We didn't want it to sound like another organization that you were a member of. We wanted to really enhance that this was more about a communication flow between the organization and the business communication, and communication business to business. So we simply renamed that Downtown Connect. And then what we want to do is we want to launch the same model, but then launch one directly to 3rd Street. Because those businesses are a little different, some of their challenges are a little different, And it gives them an opportunity, maybe 6 times a year, for them as businesses to come together with Third Street Connect. Same platform, same goal, but being able to not treat every single business challenge the same way. Make sense? So now all of a sudden, from this organization, you start to get this family of understanding, oh, this is what they do, this is how they help, this is what they connect with. And now from this platform, you have the ability for it to continue to grow and expand. If the brew pubs and breweries of Marquette want to come together and create kind of a craft brew Marquette, then there's a platform to be able to support that. So that's a really easy way. This next slide has no real meaning other than it's clever, and I just threw it in there because Sean did it. One of the big things that we always like to look at is every community has a parking problem. Every single one. There are 3 different kinds of parking problems. There's a parking awareness problem, a parking management problem, and a parking capacity problem. Communities automatically assume that they have a parking capacity problem, and the solution to that is a parking garage at the average cost of $22,500 per space to construct. Not necessarily the quickest, assumption to make that you have a capacity problem. So what you're seeing here, the smaller red outline is your super Walmart, and the bigger is its parking lot. So for all the complaints that you hear about parking in downtown, you can literally see that the parking lot of Walmart stretches from Washington all the way down to Baraga. I mean, it's literally the same complaints that you're hearing from customers. They're walking from the milk to the kitty litter. Like, it's the same distance. So one of the things that we're going to help the DDA out with is we're going to give them a template for what we call a parking card. It's just a business card, size card that has available parking map on it. You print thousands of those, and then you make those available to the businesses so they can give those out. The biggest feedback loop problem in the parking issue is the customer complains to the business, and the business doesn't have anything to say in return. And all the while, we have missed the fact that the customer is in the business when they're complaining. So the system worked, they just weren't happy about it. So being able to kind of fuel that and move that forward, I think, goes a long way. So now what you start to see is as it starts to evolve, we're starting to see the tools for the system come together. Now, to me, when the system really starts to grow legs is when we get into what we call event extension. So DDA does a load of events. There's a big event calendar. It's not all DDA too. I mean, when you look at the Marquette event calendar, holy moly. Anybody who is bored, I can't remember, I think anybody said it. Anybody who's bored has decided to be bored. Was that you that said that, Dr. And he's exactly right. So what we did was we simply went through and looked at some of the events that DDA participates in because we felt like those were the ones that we could mess around with without permission. So we start classic cars on Third. It's a typical car show type event. But now, again, you're taking some of those graphic cues, you're using the word type, but in your events, you can break out of the color palette a little. You can be a little bit more catering to that actual event. Sean loves this one, the Harvest Festival logo. Look at that. The little tilde is the leaf on the pumpkin. So being able to have those simple ways that you can take it and expand it and tie it in. Simplicity is always the key. In that same vein, your downtown Marquette tree lighting. So you can see every time you find an extension to it, it starts to build more of a connection. Now, you're not forced to do it that way. And it's not, we don't want you to think that every single implementation has to be forced into that, because then it starts to get hokey. So, just being able to use the colors, use the typeface, the winter snow fun holiday parade, that is clever. Like, you can't sit there and roll your eyes about using that for the Christmas tree and then have an event called the Winter Snow Fun. So, you know, being able to bring those in, Ladies Night, which is a great event. I'll tell you, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I told Sean earlier this week, I hate designing logos for Ladies Night. Because most of them are so, they're sexist and almost to the point of being demeaning. It's like high heels and neon pink. You guys have done a good job here where there's more kind of silhouettes of people and that kind of stuff, but I like to step back from that a little because honestly, I think that Ladies Nights should actually serve as a base platform for more of a extended hours exploration campaign for your downtowns. So you start with Ladies Nights, and then you might have Families Nights, you might have different ways that you can focus on different things. We actually had one community that had been doing Ladies Night for a long time, and then they did, coinciding with the release of, I think it was Cursed Child, Harry Potter, they did one called Muggle Night. And they started to grow it and expand it. And then they introduced one that they called Elves Night. Theirs was called Elves Night Out. And, but it was holiday shopping and that kind of stuff. So think about building platforms that can be expandable. Music on Third, great event that, you know, kind of low impact, but is truly creating. So Music on Third is an event that causes a district to change the way it operates. Typically, Third is a vehicular-oriented district. Music on Third converts the district to a pedestrian-oriented district for the event. So really cool to understand that strategy behind it. Trick or treat downtown. So again, I love Frankenstein. I don't know who that is. But now what you start to see is there's connectivity through the event series. And every time you do something, you start to contribute value back in to the overall system. And then the final category that I just want to share with you, this is where we dump all the extra stuff. This is everything that we thought was important to cover. So the first thing that we like to look at is wayfinding signage. You've got signage that's gone through the district. A lot of the signage appears in parking lots. The signage that you have now, you've all seen it. It's heavy metal piping that comes up to an A-frame with these little crossbars. It's intense. You don't have to replace all that to have a good system. In fact, a lot of what's missing here is actually the messaging in between. So we didn't want to walk too far down a wayfinding system because realistically, a wayfinding system needs to be community-wide and needs to be something that welcomes people from your gateways all the way in. So it can't be purely branded through the downtown load. But we wanted to show you a little bit about some of the components of that. Obviously, anytime you have a gateway sign, we're showing this gateway sign, but honestly, you're not going to have a gateway like this into downtown. You're going to have more of a smaller scale pole-mounted gateway that takes advantage of the scale of when downtown feels different. And it is okay to tell people, like, to welcome them multiple times. One of the biggest mistakes we make as communities is we welcome them at our corporate limits and the communication stops. So being able to welcome them multiple times and let them know they've entered somewhere interesting. Next to that, on the light pole, you have pedestrian scaled wayfinding signage and an informational kiosk. This is a point where a pedestrian orients themselves. Next to that, you have a large scale trailblazer sign. This is for higher speed roads, wider roadways, and then next to that, you have more of a slower scale wayfinding sign. These signs, typically, you want to max out with 3 destinations per sign. Northern Michigan, UP, Wisconsin, Minnesota, they invested in wayfinding before a lot of other states. I think it has something to do with snow coverage. But when they make the signs, they'd see if they could fit 24 or 28 different destinations on them. You know, it was so busy that they weren't necessarily effective. So these are the new federal standards that you want to make sure that you can adhere to. And then next to that, you can see a little bit more more dynamic look in terms of banners and some of those treatments. Now, I want to share something that we heard, actually, I'm not there yet. I'll wait until I get into more of the 3rd Street stuff. So this would be more of a comprehensive wayfinding system, but then from there we talk a little bit about banners. So I'm showing what a banner system might look like, and I want to talk through this a little. You see the one on the left, it's got all 4 colors, it's really bright and vibrant. These are going to have to be printed on vinyl. Vinyl doesn't do well all the time in super cold weather. When you combine super cold and lake wind, vinyl might not live very long. So you have to be mindful of that. It doesn't mean it's a bad choice, it just means you have to know what you're doing before you invest in it. But then you start to see, what we're actually showing is we're starting to show more solid single color type layouts. And to be honest, these can actually simplify down to super simple. But if you could imagine having full color versions at intersections, and then almost adopting block by block, your center blocks are these clean, repetitious single color, helps people to understand how to kind of navigate the downtown, and then also, oh look, I haven't even seen that area down there. So you can actually use banners to help promote better pollination through your district. With signage in the public space, you also have to think about how can you truly make an impact. Everybody know where we're looking at here? So imagine, first of all, if you buried the utilities, and then invested in something that made actual visual impact. You know, when people see some sort of arched element, they feel like that's a special, different place. You know, it's a portal. And if my orientation is right, literally that gateway is at the turtle. So, you know. So then you kind of carry your way down there and you start to think about the public space. Doing things in 3rd can be a little bit different. And, you know, maybe they're going through and they're making welcome mats. Maybe they're doing extended hours campaigns for, you know, a particular night of the week that they want the street to be vibrant. Now, I heard a lot of talk about banners on 3rd Street. There were some folks that talked to me that, to be honest, made it sound like they thought that the difference between economic success and failure was banners. The thing that I would tell you is, after traveling through the district, the light poles are the wrong scale. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but they're super short. They're like 8.5 feet tall. You're not going to be able to get much of a banner on them at all. Virtually every single pole in the district already has traffic control signage connected to it. So you just need to be mindful of how you implement color and vibrancy into the public space. When Sean designed this, he designed it in such a way that it could operate as a pole-mounted banner, or it could operate as a flag. And when you have a flag flying off of a building, you get far more movement, you get more kind of energy going on there. So just think about that as you start to think about how you would roll those things out. And what we're actually picturing is, we're picturing the art of that being able to constantly change and evolve. Something else that we really noticed along 3rd Street, 3rd Street's got bike lane, but the bike lane's probably in the wrong place. And I know a lot of you might be like, oh gosh, that's going to be expensive to change. Just wait until you have to scrape snow the next year, and then all the paint will be gone. No, I'm just kidding. So what a lot of folks are starting to do is they're starting to put the bike lanes on the sidewalk side and truly create a protected bike zone. And then you have your parallel parking on the outside. That actually does 2 things. Not only does it protect your cyclists, it shrinks the street, because it shrinks the space between where your cars are parked. Cars are perceived as immovable objects, and bikes are perceived as movable objects. So by shrinking the street, you're automatically going to lower the speed and enhance the pedestrian friendliness of the district. Now, if you take that and move it forward, it sets up the dynamic that you could actually start to do something really, really cool with your bike lanes. And some communities have explored doing what they call horizontal murals. Now, the biggest thing you have to think about here is the combination of a horizontal mural and snow removal. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say it that I understand that those are going to be dynamics, but I think this is something cool to think about. Then we always like to look at products and merchandise. Last week I was in Colorado in a community called Rifle, Colorado, and there was a business downtown that had a giant banner that said, "Home to the largest collection of Rifle, Colorado t-shirts in the world." Okay, fair enough. But being able to have products that allow people to connect with your community in ways other than just school and university and that kind of stuff, being able to have actual community-oriented products, being able to go through and make the brand available to the businesses in your community so they can create products to profit from. Creating apparel that people might want to wear instead of what we call car wash t-shirts. You know, if you have a shirt, like I know my community, it was a long time before all the shirts I had, you painted them, cut grass in them, wash the car in them. So do something that people want to wear. Think about the concept of brand co-oping, putting your identity on products that carry a certain value. I remember I've got a 15-year-old daughter who, I remember the first time she asked me if she could have a Swell bottle, and it was like she was asking for a car, you know? And I was like, what? I don't understand. You're making this out to be something weird. You want a water bottle? And she was like, yeah. It was like $55, and I think it has fairies in it that keep the things magically cold. But what happens is, most of the time when we make products, we find the product at the lowest price so that we can put our logo on it and sell it at the lowest price. So this is just a different concept. Find brands that people know. You want to position yourself as a mecca for outdoor recreation? Take a Patagonia vest and put Marquette next to it, so that all the built-in brand value in the brands that people know get transferred onto the community you're trying to build value behind. We also just went through and just created some very simple illustrations because, you know, obviously there's a lot going on social media. One of the big things that I always preach is organizations, a lot of the times they go through and they like to put whatever the most beautiful photo of their downtown is as their profile pic. And then when it shrinks down to a square, it doesn't really represent the voice of the district anymore. So make sure that you're using that. I'm showing two different examples because this is Facebook, and then this might be your Instagram. That uses the MQT. I trust the staff. You know, you can use either one, pick which one you like. And then the final thing, just kind of showing off some of the messaging. I love that you have a dog sled race, you know, in town. That's kind of cool. It says, must be headed to downtown Marquette. They look excited. Where the water meets the sky. Again, these were all phrases that we heard from the community through the survey and through the input meetings. Exploration is our middle name. Life is better on the upper hand. Historically refined, that was kind of a cool phrase that somebody said. Rediscover the downtown of the UP. It's about time we got reacquainted. So you can see it's a simple platform. The focus really is on reconnecting with our local market base, shoring up and increasing our loyalty, and then being prepared to receive the growth in that visitor market. So that's what we were able to do since yesterday. I'd love to open it up to your thoughts, your gut reactions. Again, you know, this is kind of that first swipe at it, but we wanted to be able to illustrate a system that we felt like was expandable, that could represent and come to truly represent the community with its implementation. I think that's a really big, it's a big lesson as you go through this branding process. People tend to think that a logo should tell your community's story all by itself. And that's not really how it works. Typically, when you try to do that, You either have a community with a very dull story, or you have a graphic identity that just doesn't work very well. Sean, I don't know that Sean worked on it, but a community in South Carolina, we adopted a logo that had an opera house, a swan, an iris, and an F-16 fighter jet. And it's like, well, okay, I mean, that's thorough. But, you know, I think being able to have that more simple abstract icon that you can build meaning into, that seems to make sense for a community that has so many different things going on at the same time. So, I'd like to open it up for your thoughts.
I'd just like to make one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
The thing about the colors is that you didn't have it up there, but for a long time, Marquette had Spectrum. That was our logo that the city used.
Yeah.
So you've actually kind of brought back Spectrum.
Well, they were smart. Right? They were
And
smart.
I also like the QT because there's a lot of places you can do it.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, we were thinking quirky,
Mm-hmm.
quaint,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
quality of life.
we had even considered with the two connect, we considered just referring to them as Q&As, but we felt like that didn't really capture it. But it gives you that opportunity for a lot. That's why, you know, words like reacquainted and stuff, I think it was cool to be able to tie that in. Yes, ma'am.
So I think there are a couple things that happened from the start to the finish for me. When you said you had 9 different colors, I had a moment. Somebody who's worked with branding quite a bit and worked for the DDA and worked a lot with community events, and then looking at the different typefaces that were used, seeing them individually, I had another moment, but then seeing them together, I think really brings all of the emotions that we want to see downtown. I think it's really important that those three are used together. It's like the strength of the Marquette can be really cool on its own, but with that accent text, it warms it up. And I love the flexibility of having those 9 colors, showing, I think, the distinctions between different areas of downtown,
Right.
different types of events. I think that it opens up a lot of doors for the DDA teams.
Awesome.
And as a downtown, working with a downtown business, I like the way that it can be leveraged by, you know, different businesses and events. So
Well,
that's awesome.
first of all, thank you. Let me respond to both of your moments.
Remember, this is being taped.
I know that's why I whispered. I agree with those moments. And the reason why Sean and I were comfortable making both of those risks, and I will say, I think that they were risks. In a lot of communities, we would never have suggested a palette this large. They're simply not sophisticated enough to deliver on it. They're not sophisticated enough to know how to use it. And it's going to end up being an impediment to implementation instead of an enhancement. Same thing with the word type. The typefaces could potentially be really, really scary. But we grew to have a lot of trust in the ability and sophistication of both the organization and the community. So that same hesitation that you felt was actually a confirmation from us in, hey, we want to make sure that this truly looks and feels different than what a lot of people are doing because you have the ability to roll it out. But thank you for sharing that kind of hesitation because that is important to hear that gut and then feel it ease out as you watch it. So, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm having a gut reaction to reacquainted,
Mhm.
because I don't know how much, I didn't have a chance to go very many meetings, but there is a sense, well, I know, actually, I know you heard this, there's a sense that we're being cut off from the waterfront, that I've heard from a lot of people, and I would not use the word reacquainted, because it tap into the feeling that I've been denied something I had my whole life that's being taken away from me.
So,
So, and I don't know if that's I mean, that's not maybe your guys' problem as the DDA, that's more the city's problem.
yeah.
I just became a city commissioner. And so, but I would just, from the overwhelming amount of times I heard that from the public, I think access is a great word,
Mhm.
but that reacquainted, I really think you're gonna not get the place you wanna be.
I understand completely. I will tell you the exact concern that you have is the reason we use it. If the organization is uncomfortable with the delivery because the sentiment is so strong, I get that, and I think that you're right. Those are the kind of things that I don't think we could ever truly dig into the nuances of that energy unless we're here for a very long time. But we heard the message, we heard the sentiment, and we also heard it's not just the disconnection from the lake shore or the water. We heard over and over again, downtown's just for the tourists. I have no clue what that means. I went down there. There are a lot of businesses that people can shop at. I didn't see 3 fudge shops right next to each other with a weird airbrush t-shirt parlor. I grew up going to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I know what tourist looks like. And so we want to create a message that really kind of boldly says, this is still your downtown. And I mean, we drove down there, we saw the building that someone in the room might have described as a behemoth. Maybe, anonymously, right? And the thing is, the building's not that big. We can argue whether it's appropriate or not. That's not the place or time. The thing that it is it's a building where a building didn't used to be. So that's hard. That's hard. We worked all along the Mississippi Gulf Coast after Katrina ravaged the coast, and you had hundreds of antebellum homes that were literally Gulf front homes that were wiped off the planet, and we had to deal with that relationship between communities and their water access and their water vision. You can always play devil's advocate. You can say, wow, it's surprising that a community that has a giant dock that was intended to put like raw industrial coal into giant ships is upset by a residential tower. You can make that argument if you want, but again, I think the biggest thing is really that invitation. This is your downtown. Come be a part. Come be a supporter of it. Come discover it. Come experience it for yourself. And that constant invitation to be part of it. If the word is wrong, I completely understand. But I think it's always my job to push the envelope so that the community can walk it back. I'd rather take you to have that discussion.
Well, in this case too, we're really not talking about the lake shore, we're talking about the downtown,
Mhm.
and feeling comfortable, and even as far as reacquainted, we spent the last 25 years turning back to the lake, because everything was turned away from the lake, because the lake shore was so ugly and industrial. So we have really spent the last 25, 30, 35 years in this community cleaning it up and turning it back to the lake and like embracing the lake shore. So yeah, reacquaint yourself to this formerly industrial, or we could do the opposite play in the tourism guide, say it's time we got cleaned.
Right. Well, and the other thing that
Q. I like this play on the
Yeah.
Q.
the other thing that was kind of cool that we heard pointed out a couple times was because of the dynamics in Marquette, your seasonality, like you have seasons, but you don't have high, super low, like it's not that kind of season because you've got snowbirds that are coming in when students are leaving, and with students you've got a constantly circulating population, with staff at the university you've got turnover going on. So you've got all this like constant movement and this idea of just making sure that you're bringing people back in and making that invitation. But I think you all have laid that foundation for the conversation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going to continue that conversation. But I look at that statement as the fact that we keep getting better and better and better. And that, my kids, my millennial kids have gone away, but every time they come back, they get reacquainted with this place.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause that's really, like, you know, it is North Third Street.
Find yourself up north, yeah. So that was one of those things, and I didn't really highlight it as we were going through, but that kind of secondary tagline for Third Street, find yourself up north. It creates a motivator to drive traffic, and you know, I think what I told the DA board this morning was almost like this, just trying to figure out how you can build telling downtown story, telling Third Street story, always like getting creative, over sensitivity to all these small urban areas, and it's really created this desire to outreach your district everything. And the way your district streets, you know, they're down the street, like, and we tend to overlap and we tend to realize a lot and then kind of break it down to even harder. And, you know, they're treated different, we treat it different, but it's part of this big story. And so I'm pretty excited about it. Other questions or anything else that, anything glaringly missing because we try to hit on so much, but it's very, very easy for stuff to kind of slip through the cracks. Yes, sir.
I just want to call you a suggestion to the DDA as far as implementation. I may have missed that this morning, but like, where do you start with something like this? Should you shotgun approach to all at once, a little bit here, year by year? Have you seen it done well and done incorrectly?
Oh, I mean, it's done well when it's used and it's done incorrectly when it sits, but I think, I mean, obviously the first place that you start is you look at the things that DDA controls and you look towards adoption. And then you identify what are the things that we can organically roll out in all of the work that we already do. So that's kind of the organic rollout of it. And then from there you look at what are the things that are the most logical next steps for us to invest in. And between now and our final visit, that's when our implementation strategy will really come together. But it's going to be focused on figuring out the ways that you can roll it out with the resources that you have and the opportunities that make most sense. The communities that have done it wrong have decided to celebrate too early. They have this giant launch event, and then there's a big gap between the launch and actual implementation. So that's one of, thanks, Pastor. Thanks a lot. That's one of the biggest things that we've kind of learned is you want to get some legs out under you and then kind of celebrate more of the actual launch. You want to get it in play.
I just want to kind of address that too, is
Yep.
that I have a lot of faith in my staff. And my staff is very talented and they know how to do this stuff. I think probably our starting point is the connect with the businesses. Working with the businesses to help us. But I've got a lot of talent in what we have internally.
Right.
And it'll be a slow rollout, I believe, but I think it's going to be effective.
And one of the components of the system that we hope will help aid in that is there'll be a comprehensive style guide document and then all the digital assets. And they'll literally all be compiled into a single location and be able to be shared through a single link. So that as the DDA is going out and engaging the business community, they can literally give them access to those resources to be able to tap into and use. And that goes a long way. If you pave the path, it makes it a lot easier for people to become part of it.
The other thing, this will have to be obviously formally adopted,
Right.
you know, by the DDA board. I mean, this is just a manifesto.
Mhm.
So it'll have to, you know, it's got to move through the channels.
Exactly.
But I think it's fresh.
Yes, ma'am.
That whole paragraph thing in the beginning, that we can still change around.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That, and in fact, sure, and that, she was asking about the brand statement. That brand statement, that's yours, you know? It's intended to help take, you know, an entire survey and multiple days of input and kind of cull it down into what our general direction was and the story we want to tell. It can grow, it can expand, it can be edited, it can be broken out into different pieces. That is, I kind of see it as a living document where you don't have to land on, okay, it's done, finished, don't ever touch it again. We had one community where it constantly kind of grew, and they would take out little paragraphs and use that in ads and that kind of stuff. I had another community where the mayor actually printed them out and had them framed and gave them to business leaders because it felt like it captured that essence. So absolutely, that's kind of a living narrative for
And
sure.
I also feel as we get input, sometimes might need to be we're gonna be looking for input. I have to be honest with you, this is just my, love the third, but it reminds me of Ellen Earnhardt,
Mm.
the three.
Yeah.
It's in there, I get the up.
It almost sounds like you're saying that like a negative. I'm not really sure why the intimidator is inappropriate. Yes.
As a DDA board member, a lot of times we hear Third Street businesses feel like they have a little disconnect. And my question maybe is for the Third Street businesses in here, do you feel comfortable with what was presented here? Does it make you feel a little more connected? And what are your opinions? I haven't heard from too many of the Third Street businesses. I know you want more trees, but what are you thinking about this? Man, what do you think about
I like a lot. You guys did a really good job.
I'm just processing a lot of it, to be honest, at the kind of first blush. So I was trying to recall, like, the first slides kind of had the districts down here with a solid color, correct?
Mm.
Okay. And then third was more of a mosaic.
Yeah, so third is different. I mean, there will be solid color versions of that third one, but when we showed it, we wanted to show how versatile and ever-changing it could be. To be completely honest, third is different.
Oh, yeah.
Like I did not do a variation like I did for those other downtown districts.
Yeah.
But there will be cleaner versions of whatever that word type is. So it'll kind of work in there. But honestly, I mean, I'm treating it as different because it's different.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I would say the other districts too aren't really districts at this point, but what this allows for is future development, future opportunities in that direction.
And really the biggest thing that creates the difference with sub-districts inside the downtown core is the energy of the stakeholders who want to develop the personality. We talked a lot about the area from 4th to 7th on West Washington. And there's some energy there. There are a couple cool businesses there that I'm not sure that it really has a name that has landed on. I don't want to be the one who just invents a name. Because that complicates things and the businesses might not want to complicate things. So, we've created the platform to be able to accept it. I think we refer to it as West End because, you can't call it West Washington because everything's West Washington. It's weird to have like the bulk of the East Side Originals businesses are located on West Washington. It's kind of like, okay, that's East Washington must be a really tiny street. So being able to kind of factor in and just create that expandability is important.
In regards to Tony's question as well, I think that your idea on top of Third and Ridge, I don't know what you'd like to call it, but the welcoming sign that says "Come up to the top of the hill" is a very, very fine idea, and many people have suggested something like that. And also down on Fair Avenue, something also entrance areas like this. You're about to come into this other location, you're not just on another street, you're on Third Street.
Right.
So those things were good. Overall, I think the presentation was very good.
Anything else? Because we just cracked the hour mark. We want to make sure that we're sensitive to you guys' time. So, tell you what, Sean and I are going to be around. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention. Like we say, we've recorded this. We're going to make it available online that you can go back and you can review, you can dig in, you can can see it on the screen, so you can actually kind of see with more detail. And then please feel free to share any comments, any thoughts. Is there a particular, do you want to go, like, is there a particular DDA?
Yeah, myself or Sarah.
Okay, all right.
Well, because we should have one person, right, so we can funnel them through, they can send it to me.
Sorry, send it along. And then what we'll do from there is, we'll collect those refinements, we'll go back and we'll integrate the things that are gonna make this system even better and kind of more expandable and stronger. And then, from there, in the near future, we'd like to see, chances are the way we're gonna shoot for is we're gonna shoot for the final recommendations after the refinement has come in to go back to the DDA board for their consideration in December. I'm shooting from the hip on that, but that seems to make sense, so that we can maybe shoot to have a toolbox ready to deliver by the end of the year. Is that a good time? And then from there, we'll be planning a return visit back for all final deliverables and maybe kind of a public, public presentation and include more people to kind of see the final product and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're shooting for. But I just really want to appreciate all your time and thoughts and input into it, and we're excited to see where you guys take it from here. So thank you so much.